Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 11 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started on time. We know everybody's quite busy, and we want to respect that, so we'll keep things moving. My name is Brett Dunn. I'm with DesignPoint. I'm the Vice President of Sales here. And today I have with me Loretta Stierka, and Loretta's a Senior Application Engineer here, and Loretta will be doing our presentation for us today in terms of showing you some tools and techniques that we use to help migrate data. Forgive me one moment, I've clicked on the wrong button. Loretta, if you don't mind, I've lost my video here, so if you could go ahead and take us to the next slide and go over the agenda while I'm getting this going, I appreciate it.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how much is your current CAD system costing you, and we're going to discuss the total cost of ownership for your CAD system and how SOLIDWORKS can help increase productivity. We're also going to talk about migrating data, and this is where I'm actually going to get into the demo portion of it and show you how easy it is to go from a third-party software into SOLIDWORKS and just bring things in. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about best practices for making the switch. Things we've seen our customers do that have made them very, very successful in going from a different software into SOLIDWORKS. And then finally, we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A. So if you think of any questions while we're going through things, go ahead and write them down, or you can send them through the chat if you'd like. Brett, do you have?
I am back. Thank you for this. Thank you for the save, Loretta. Thank you. All right, so next slide, please. Thanks for your patience, folks. So let's talk about total cost of ownership here. When we start this conversation, what we like to do is start with your actual cost and paint a picture here of how CAD companies today are collecting dollars and what your options are. And what you're seeing here in this illustration is that SOLIDWORKS for the last 25 years or so has been offering what we call perpetual licenses, right? That model is one where you invest in the license once, you only pay for it once, and then hopefully you also invest in subscription year over year to keep that license up to date and get full technical support and so forth. That model has been in place from all CAD companies, again, for decades now. And now other options are coming to market, and our competitors, namely Autodesk, PTC, Siemens, and the like, are offering pay-as-you-go models. They all have different names for those programs, but basically the way that it works is, you pay for the license every month, and when you stop paying, the software stops working, okay? And the first thing to really think about when you're talking about cost of ownership is, what does that look like over time? Studies have shown that the average length of term when you invest in a CAD software solution is somewhere between 7 and 10 years, okay? So what that means is that when you think about what this is going to cost you, you shouldn't be thinking about what it's going to cost you every month, but instead, what is this going to cost me over time, over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years to 10 years, to understand what that total cost looks like. And that's exactly what you're seeing here in this illustration, is that in the first few years, you'll see that the cost difference between a perpetual license where, and I'm comparing here SOLIDWORKS Standard at $39.95 plus 3 years of subscription at $12.95, as compared to, and folks, please understand all of these numbers are kind of directional, meaning this is not illustrating any promotions. Sometimes prices change up or down. This is just directional. The last time I looked, Inventor was about $235 a month. So we're just comparing what that looks like over 36 months. And what you'll see there is that even in a shorter period of time, like 3 years, SOLIDWORKS still costs less over time. And in fact, the farther out you look, right, when you look at this model, when you start looking at 10 years, for example, now the savings really becomes obvious, and it's measurable, and it's kind of big dollars, right? So that's only one side, and that's the actual cost. And quite frankly, that's the way most people look at these decisions, is purely from the financial side, from the what it costs me over time. So we wanted to share this with you. We'll be happy to work with you on any specific model that might pertain to your business. Keep in mind, this illustration, this example right here, is one license. Imagine what this looks like when you're talking about 3 licenses, 5 licenses, 100 licenses, right? So this is one part of it. Let's go to the next slide. To me, the bigger part of the conversation, let's go one at a time here, Loretta. The bigger part of the conversation here is related to productivity and efficiency, okay? So if on one hand you're looking at what are your costs over time, you should also be looking at which tools are actually better for you. So that in your analysis, if you compare SOLIDWORKS to anything else, if you believe, or any 2 other products for that matter, it doesn't have to be SOLIDWORKS in the mix, if you believe that one product is better for any reason, you want to quantify that. Because when you quantify that over time, right, typically CAD users use the CAD software somewhere between 5 and 8 hours a day, typically 5 days a week, typically 50 weeks a year. When you start looking at the math related to that, it really adds up. So without getting into the details of a SOLIDWORKS demo today, what's been shown, you know, time and time again, and the reason why SOLIDWORKS has become the standard is that we just have more robust and deeper tools in every area. And the nature of those robust tools and deeper tools allow you to design without any barriers, without anything getting in the way. No workarounds, for example. Let's go to the next bullet. Another thing you'll want to consider is ease of use and how intuitive the user interface. Again, these things convert to efficiency and productivity. Next bullet. Another thing you want to consider is the support structure behind your investment, right? The model that we showed you in the previous slide, in the case of SOLIDWORKS, was not only a license, but full support with unlimited technical support from, in this case, DesignPoint, right? And so you'll want to think about what does that mean in terms of your productivity across your team, right? There's certainly a value there. Let's go to the next slide. So what you want to do is start looking at, well, if I think that that one tool is more robust, it has better tools, and I think that the interface is a little easier, and the learning curve will be shorter, and therefore the productivity gain will be greater. And I believe that I'm going to get better support. And if you're not sure of that, you certainly want to interview your reseller very closely to understand what they can offer. Okay, in our case, again, unlimited technical support, #1 in customer satisfaction in all of North America 4 times, including the last 2 years. These things really add up. So as an example, if we were just looking at one person, and let's say we made an argument, again, keep in mind this is just one example. If we believed that one person using one piece of software was 20% more efficient and productive than using some other software, one easy way to think about that is 20% of a 5-day week is another day a week. So in effect, this person's able to get 6 days of work done in 5 days because the tool allows them to be 20% more efficient. Look at the next slide. Or the next bullet, I'm sorry. So think about that as it scales up. This is another example, and this is more from a financial perspective. 5 people at just a 10% gain in efficiency is the equivalent of $75,000 a year in savings. Again, that's, you'll see in parentheses there, that's based on 75 hours, 5 days a week, blah, 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 right? So it really adds up. So now when you take into account not only the financial side, the cost side, over time, but also the fact that SOLIDWORKS has been proven to be better, faster, right, more efficient, more effective, easier to use, and so forth. These things really add up. Let's go to the last bullet. And that's what you want to really think about, is that SOLIDWORKS has become the standard not because of any one thing. It's because of all of these aspects, the shorter learning curve, the deeper tools, the lower cost of ownership, you know, based on the model and how you invest in it and how you pay for it over time. Let's go to the next slide. So here, I'll hand it over to Loretta, and Loretta can walk us through some tools and techniques that we have to offer to make this potential switch even easier for you. Loretta?
Sure. Thank you, Brett. Okay, so one of the things we hear a lot from customers that are coming over from like a third-party CAD tool is, okay, but what about data migration? I have all of this stuff that I've already created. I have all these models I've created in whatever program. Maybe it's Inventor, maybe it's PTC, Creo, and they want to bring it in, right? And the great thing about SOLIDWORKS is that we have tools that make that data migration really, really easy. And I'm going to show you a couple of them today. I'm going to start by showing you 3D Interconnect, which was introduced into the software a couple of years ago. It allows us to use existing models as they are and even collaborate with third-party vendor, or I guess customers that have these third-party tools. And then I'm going to show you how to import and translate files so we can bring models in and automatically and intelligently convert those features. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is if we do have 2D data, we only have drawings, it's not a big deal because we can bring that stuff into SOLIDWORKS as a sketch, and then we can like extrude it and use that, and we're not having to start from scratch. So with that, let's jump into the fun part, the demo, right? And I'm just going to jump into SOLIDWORKS here. Chose a DeLorean as my example because in a sense we're going kind of from the past to the future. And you can see it's fully functional. It even has a flux capacitor, but it's missing something, right? It's missing something very, very important. It's missing the wheels. So the good news is that I have a model for these wheels, but it's a third-party file. Using 3D Interconnect, though, I can actually just grab this file. You can see it's an IPT file. We have a lot of choices here for different types of files we can bring in. And we can open that. And literally what we're going to do is we're going to allow it to place this into our model in its native format. So you can see we've got a preview. It actually looks exactly like a SOLIDWORKS file, right? And the other cool thing here is over here on the left in my tree, I actually have somewhat of a structure to this part, and I have the planes. So I can grab the front plane of this wheel, and just like with any other SOLIDWORKS file, I can create a coincident mate with the part of the car. And, of course, a concentric mate there. So this is great, right? We've got our wheel, and I actually didn't have to do anything. There was no translation that went on in that process other than to bring the graphics in and to bring the planes and other things in so we can mate it in place. So this is one way we can start using our legacy data, or we can also work with our customers if they have these types of files very, very simply. The other thing that might happen is you might have different versions of this file, right? So we might have an updated version, or we might get that for one of our customers. So I wanted to show you guys how 3D Interconnect handles the situation. And to kind of mimic that situation, what I did was we're just going to overwrite the wheel we had previously. I'm just going to copy and paste that here. So copy and replace. And so we have the new version of the file in place. And you can see here in our tree, now this icon has updated with a little refresh symbol. And so what that tells me is I can actually right-click on this part and update the model. So what SOLIDWORKS does in this case is it actually just looks back at, again, like the actual data from that third-party CAD file, and it just brings it in. And the really cool thing about this is that all of our mates are maintained. So I don't have to go back and do a bunch of rework there because it's taking care of that for me, right? So it's a very, very intelligent add-in to the software. And of course, we need more than one wheel here, right? So we'll just grab this guy and we'll add a couple of mates in here, place this in our model, right? And then, of course, just like with any other file, we can mirror these. I think it's about the right plane. Yep, right plane. And I'm just going to grab these two wheels. All right. So our DeLorean is now fully functional, and we're ready to kind of move to the future here. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but what if I need to make a change now that I've adopted SOLIDWORKS? Well, the great thing about 3D Interconnect in SOLIDWORKS is that it's very flexible. So we can take any one of these parts and we can actually break the link to the original file here. And what that allows us to do is actually open up the part, and now we can make some changes. Okay? So you can see actually this is still linked to the original part in a sense. We just created a virtual component in our assembly that allows us to add more information to it. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't like the way these holes look. I need 5 instead of 4. So I'm just going to use my delete face command to get rid of all of them, right? Again, it's just acting exactly like a SolidWorks file at this point. And then from here, I can go in and create my own sketch and make my own cut. And maybe I want to pattern that around my wheel. So again, it's just very, very easy to make these changes to our wheel part. Maybe I also want to add a chamfer in here quickly. Like that. Just some simple changes here too to demonstrate the concept. Okay, so back in the DeLorean assembly, you can see all these changes have been propagated to all 4 of these wheels. So we were able to bring those files in their native format. We were able to make changes in their native format, and we were also able to update them based off of an update from the vendor. So really, really powerful stuff when it comes to 3D interconnect. The second bullet point in there, if you remember, was I wanted to show you how we can actually import things directly. And to demonstrate this, we're just going to jump back into SolidWorks. We're going to do a regular file open just on that wheel. And I'm going to kind of simulate the way things were before we had 3D interconnect. So we're going to open the model. It's going to check for faulty geometry. Didn't find anything. So we're going to break the link to the original. And this is what we used to see, right? We just get an imported body here when we bring in this file. But the cool thing is we have a feature called Feature Works that allows us to try and recognize features. And I'm just going to select the automatic mode. You can choose interactive if you only want to recognize certain features. But this is great because it actually builds up our feature tree. So you can see it's created a couple of revolves and these holes here, right? And the whole feature, of course, we can edit it, right? So we can change the positions here. We can change the type of hole. And the revolve features, of course, they have sketches within them, right? So let's say we wanted some different sizes of this wheel. I'm going to let SolidWorks fully define my sketch for me first. That way I get a couple dimensions on there. And then let me take a look at this. Okay. What we can do is we can create configurations. These are kind of like eye parts if you're used to Inventor. So I can take a dimension and I can configure the dimension and create a new configuration or a new eye part here. And I'm just going to give it a value of 12. Say OK. So the cool thing about this is it allows me to very quickly switch between different sizes of this wheel, right? And with very, very little work involved. So importing this model, the one reason we might want to do it is if we want to get really, really detailed and completely rework our part from start to finish, or if we want to create a bunch of different configurations of our part in terms of size. But really, really powerful tools in SolidWorks that allow us to do that. And then the third bullet point, which I don't have time to cover in depth, but I know we've done other webinars on it, and I'm happy to show you, later. I'll create a video or something like that if you want, is going from 2D into 3D. So we can just bring sketches into SolidWorks and then use those sketches to very quickly create a 3D model. But the cool thing about that is that we have options. Three main options I'm giving you today in terms of how we can handle data migration. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Brett.
Thanks, Loretta. That was great. Appreciate that very much. So let's just go through some bullets about best practices for making this switch. I don't want to trivialize this idea, right? Switching from one CAD system to another. While it's getting easier because we have better tools available to us today than we did in the past, it still requires a plan. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about making the switch, to sit down with your reseller, talk about all the options, and here's some additional points. Let's go over that. Next one. So in your plan, you want to have a data migration plan, right? That's obvious. That's what part of what Loretta was just going over there is what tools and techniques are we going to use? And specifically, we want to think about how much of the data really needs to be translated, okay? So you want to sit down and talk with somebody about, sometimes there's a perception that there's this mountain of data that has to be translated or migrated in some period of time. Most of the time, when you really think that through, that's not the case. Some of it needs to be migrated sooner rather than later for sure, but not all of it needs to be migrated immediately. Let's check out the next bullet. You'll want to think about training, right? So today there's so much information available on the web that more and more people are trying to self-educate. I would just encourage you to work with your reseller to come up with a formal training plan. Because moving from one system to another, sometimes there's a perception of, well, we know 3D already. We're already using Creo, or we're already using Inventor, or whatever it might be. And absolutely, that will help the transition from one system to the other. But all of these systems are a little bit different. Every CAD system has a little different approach to certain techniques. They all start with sketches, and you extrude and cut with sketches. There are some similarities. But I would encourage you, again, to get formal training and talk with your reseller about a training strategy, not just classes, a strategy to get your team migrated in a way that you'll maximize your return on investment. Okay, next bullet, please. And again, just like you saw from Loretta, leverage the technology to automate as much of it as you can, right? So whether you're using 3D Interconnect or you're using some 2D to 3D translation tools, or maybe configurations like Loretta showed, we can do families of parts very quickly. Sometimes we can take similar but different parts and very highly automate the creation of multiple configurations of the part much faster than we can migrate one 3D model at a time. So you'll want to look at all of those options and figure out how to apply all those different techniques in a way that, again, you get the job done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Next bullet, please. And lean on our support staff. If you're working with DesignPoint, you're not in this alone. If you're investing with us in the software and the support, you deserve this plan, right? This is not on you. Another perspective that I'll give you is, and I hope everybody takes this as the positive, encouraging kind of advice that it's meant to be, is that most companies, again, you only make this decision to switch CAD systems maybe every 10 years or so. And because of that, you don't have a lot of experience typically. Maybe in your career you have done this once or twice. But there's definitely value in talking to a company like DesignPoint that's literally helped thousands, I'm not exaggerating, thousands of companies move from some other system to SolidWorks. So we've got a lot of experience. We have a lot of advice that we can share with you to try to make this transition as quick and easy as it can be. So please lean on us to do that. I think there's one more bullet. And again, set specific milestones. So for example, when you develop your plan, you want to plan it from the perspective of, for example, start with training, right? If you have 10 people to train, your strategy probably isn't to train 10 people at once. Your strategy is probably, let's train 5 people in the first round, and then 3, and then 2, and something like that, or 5 and 5. Think about the strategy behind how you'll leapfrog your people through the training, right? So that you can still get the work done at the office. You'll want to think about, okay, as these people come out of Fundamentals 1 training, what can they start doing towards migrating some of the data, right? And make sure that you've worked with us or your reseller to come up with a plan, to support that. These people using these tools to go after this data to get it migrated in this amount of time. So when you set those milestones, now at the end of this thing, you've got a really solid plan that we can help you execute. And that's the difference between, in a lot of cases, a successful or unsuccessful migration from one system to another is the plan itself. Okay? I don't think I had anything else. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So now we're open for questions if anybody has any. Loretta, can you make that available?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions for us? Looks like Joel has a hand raised.
There should be a little questions box where you can send us questions through the webinar.
If you don't have questions at the moment, that's certainly fine. If you have any questions as a follow-up, please feel free to reach out to us. My email address is bdunn, that's B-D-U-N-N, at design-point.com. Feel free to get those questions out, and then I'll get those distributed to my team, the tech team, the sales team, and whoever needs to get involved to help you. I'll be happy to get that distributed. Looks like Joel has a question. How do we get that?
Oh, yeah, so I see it.
Just says
got it. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time. This was recorded. We will get it posted out on our website in case you want to review it again or share it with anybody else on your teams. Okay, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
There's a question, Loretta, I see. All of their CAD
oh, okay.
Okay.
SolidWorks will not.
Joel, I'll address your question. So it says all of their CAD systems are forcing subscriptions. Can it be in writing that SolidWorks will not? I can't project what SolidWorks will do in the future. I can tell you what they're doing now. So currently, subscriptions are not mandatory. Okay. So for example, you could buy SolidWorks, a new SolidWorks license without subscription. We would highly discourage that idea because we want to make sure that you're successful. But there's no rule that says that you have to. Now, if you don't subscribe and then you do want to subscribe later, this is important. Let's say 3 years passes and then you say, okay, now I'm ready to get on subscription because I want to update to the new release. At that point, whatever amount of time has passed plus 1 year is what you'd have to pay for subscription. So the important thing to know there is that while it's not mandatory, it's not a great financial decision not to do it. Okay, so we should probably go over that in more detail with you if that's the plan that you want to execute, to make sure you understand what all of your options are. Okay, I don't see any other questions at the moment. Right, here's another one. PTC, for example, allows for perpetual, but with a hefty increase every year and the threat of holding back future functionality. Yeah, SolidWorks typically doesn't take an aggressive position like that with holding anything hostage. It's simply a matter of, if you're on subscription, you get all of the updates that come out every year. So in the case of SolidWorks, that's 200 to 300 enhancements per year. And you get unlimited technical support from your reseller, and you have access to a bunch of tools kind of behind the curtain, so to speak, through mysolidworks.com. If you're willing to give up all of those things and pay the penalties to get back onto a future release later, then the option's still there with no other threats per se. Okay? So Joel, I would encourage you, if you have any other questions about these kinds of things, just give us a call. We'll be happy to go over those options with you. Our phone number here is, and I don't know where you're located, but any of these numbers will work, 717-397-9707. My personal extension is 213. If you'd like to talk with anybody on the tech support staff, just hit 3, and I will go to tech support. Okay? I don't see any other questions. Again, thank you for your time and your interest, and let us know how we can help.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Appreciate your time. Bye.